Hello, I'm Jamie and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for so many views on my last ghost video, that's insane. And because it got way more views than I was expecting it to get, there's also so many really interesting comments about all the different theories. So I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of pick out what kind of most people are thinking, some interesting theories, and put them all into one video. And then maybe make another one once the next season's out and kind of see how all the theories progress and we get a bit more information. So yeah, I'm just going to start with the kind of the theories about the laws of being a ghost. So my theory, I was a bit confused with kind of like, they say your ghost looks how you died, but then some of them there's no like bruises or any blood or anything when you'd expect there would be. So one person said theory is that ghosts appear as they died, so the reason that Fanny doesn't have any injuries is because she died for the bruises formed. And I've seen a couple of theories being like that there's an idea that when you're falling you kind of like die before you hit the ground, so you die before all of your injuries start to appear, so that makes sense. There's also quite a few interesting theories about why they are actually ghosts, like why these people are ghosts and, you know, why the ant isn't a ghost. So one person says that all the ghosts that we know so far have had their death caused by someone they trusted. So Fanny with her husband, Pat with Keith, Thomas with his cousin, the plague ghost with the person who brought back the blankets, Mary by her community, and so a certain tragic cause of death is needed. Because as Alison's aunt, when she died of natural causes of old age, so she didn't become a ghost. And then another person also kind of like keeps that same idea and says that all ghosts because they were essentially murdered or killed at the hands of another person, even if accidentally. Which I think is really good, and she kind of explains every single little one, which I'll probably go into individually when I kind of talk about each ghost. There might be a bit of crossover with some of the theories, but yeah. One person says that another rule with ghosts is they must have an unfinished purpose, otherwise there's no need for them to come back as a ghost, as they have nothing to fulfill on Earth. Then linking us to Kitty, saying that she has unfinished business in a game of hide and seek because she hid and was never found, which is a big theory about her death, which we'll get into that in a second. First of all, I'm going to go into the captain's death because I think there's so many interesting theories with him. First of all, I think it's a little bit of a silly one, but I really like it. So the theory that the captain died and Churchill told him to jump off a cliff in Horrible Histories, which I'll just include a little clip if I can.
Yeah. Honestly, if I told you to go and jump off a cliff, would you? He's gone to jump off a cliff.
I think it'd be amazing if they do a crossover with Horrible Histories in that way. I think that'd be absolutely amazing. And also someone also commented underneath that saying they could have died of a gas attack, which I think that could be possible. They might have been testing a certain gas or something like after the war, testing things, and experiment went wrong and he ended up dying. I think that could work really well. With the captain, most of the theories is that he died because of his sexuality or of like love for Havers that perhaps was unrequited, so or that died from grief hearing that Havers was killed in battle, because obviously Havers was frontline. Some people think that he died of natural causes, which is an embarrassment, so he wanted to get out in a blaze of glory. Also think that he took ill from Button House and his last wish was to be dressed in his uniform. Yeah, I think his uniform is a very interesting point because obviously it takes place after the war, but he's still in his war uniform. So it kind of raises the question as to whether he was doing official duty and was wearing his uniform, or whether, as this person says, wanted to die in their uniform. So kind of like maybe they got dressed in that to die, whether that be self-inflicted death or he kind of expected it would happen, maybe through illness. So I think that is a very interesting thing about whether or not he was purposely dressed in his uniform or whether that was just what he was wearing. And also someone says maybe the medals are back to front because someone else dressed him and didn't know what order the medals in, and maybe the captain couldn't fix that. So one of the big theories is that his death was perhaps self-inflicted because of the unrequited love, or that his lover died, or that he's ashamed of his sexuality, all of which could work in. I'm not sure whether that would be I think it would definitely be plausible. I'm not sure whether they'd actually use that. I feel like it'd be fairly triggering to a lot of people and perhaps not what you'd put in a comedy. I feel like all of the deaths have to have some sort, they can't be too morbid or too like emotional, otherwise I feel like it wouldn't quite fit with the comedy, and you don't really want to make light of certain things. So even though I think it would work, I don't know whether it would work in a comedy. So one of my favourite theories about Captain, which I've never heard before and I didn't even think of, and it also links to the mirror theory, was that, I'm just going to read out the whole comment because it's really good. I read a theory about how the captain may have died from a memory-related disease. That would explain why he's the only one who hasn't had his name revealed. He may not remember it. Also, when he appears in the mirror, there's a crack across his head, which is often used in media to show that someone's mental state is deteriorating. I absolutely love this theory. I think it works so well on so many different levels. So obviously, yeah, you've got the symbolism with the crack over his head, and you've got the fact that he doesn't say his name, so maybe he's forgotten his name. Someone just comment that maybe that even if he doesn't know his name, all of the other people, all the other ghosts, sorry, that were there before him would know his name. However, one thing about the ghosts is that they do know a lot about the ghosts that come after them, but they just don't talk about it unless it's kind of like prompted. So for Thomas's death, loads of the ghosts knew what happened, but they never talked about it. And with Mary, Robin, I think, would be the only one that came before her. Yeah, Robin. He would have seen what happened potentially, but hasn't spoken about it. Another thing that this kind of links to is the fact that the captain's whole personality is the war, so perhaps that's the only thing he remembers. And when they're asking about what clothes they would wear, he says he'd wear his suit, his uniform, which could be maybe because, you know, he just loves the war, that's his like passion in life. It could be that's the only thing he remembers. So yeah, I think that could be good, and it could be a really good episode with Alison trying to bring back some of his memories. Yeah, I think that is an amazing theory. Another comment says that perhaps the captain froze to death, which would kind of explain his creaky bones, which, yeah, I think that would work quite well as well. Although it was pointed out that the creaky bones, the creaky knees, was actually reference to Ben Willbond's like actual personal issue with creaky knees. He just has creaky knees, so they've kind of like played upon that. So whether that is actually a clue to his death or just making fun of Ben, like, I don't know. I feel like freezing to death would work. Okay, so going on to Kitty again, loads of theories about Kitty. So one of the main one is that she was poisoned. So because in the last episode of season 2 she vomits, and Robin says that that's never happened before, so that is obviously a clue potentially to her death. Some people mention the hide and seek bit, maybe because, like we said before, she was left alone so long that she had to eat her purse, so maybe she ate something else that was like berries or poisonous leaf, so that they're highly toxic and that's what killed her. So there's kind of a difference between poisoned by mistake and poisoned on purpose. So a lot of things was like food poisoning, so maybe the egg, they talk about, oh, the first time I ate an egg I didn't like it, so maybe she was poisoned by mistake. Since it's the Georgian era, it was common for the upper class people to die from pewter plates since they were laced with lead. It's also where the term poison apple comes from. It's believed that tomatoes were killing people, which I think that would be a very interesting one. Yeah, and yeah, this kind of links to it again. It was the theory of Kitty's is that she was poisoned or died from consumption, as it had been an overindulgent lifestyle, and then that links to the ghost vomit. Another theory with Kitty is that perhaps during one of her games of hide and seek she went into like a box or something like that and potentially suffocated, which I think is quite interesting. And I did get a message from someone on Instagram who runs kind of like a Herbal Histories ghosts account, and she had a theory about perhaps Kitty's body was never found, because again in the one episode about hide and seek, no one ever finds me. So I think that would be heartbreaking if she was never found, but I feel like that would be a very interesting one, and that's kind of her unfinished purpose, which was mentioned before, was that she was never found. So kind of links to maybe, again, game of hide and seek. She hid very well, or perhaps she was forgotten about and ended up suffocating or eating something poisonous and then dying and her body never being found. So one theory that I'd never really questioned that much Was that perhaps, so people talk about the fact that maybe they'll address that she is a seemingly wealthy black woman, which when you think about Georgian times, you don't really think of black people being higher in society. But actually, there is a movie made about this. Dido Elizabeth Bell, she was a real person, and she was kind of the illegitimate daughter of somebody rich, and they basically took her onto the estate, and she was raised as if she was like a wealthy woman. Sorry if that's incorrect, I've only done a little bit of research on it. So this is actually mentioned in another comment. He says that my guess is that she was brought over from another country by the Lord Button returning from war and integrated as a new sister for his only child daughter. The daughter or the stepmother didn't like having her around and did anything to get rid of her, including pretending to play hide and seek or just not bothering to look. I get the idea that the daughter didn't like her from what is said, but Kitty, being so nice, didn't realise that they were being cruel. I think she was poisoned with her food by either the stepsister or the stepmother because they didn't want her getting some of the Button money and found having her in the family was embarrassing. You see in season 2 episode 6 that she is sick, so she must have had that in her stomach when she died. Yeah, I really like this theory. I didn't really connect the two originally, like, you know, why is she a wealthy black woman? It didn't really connect in my mind. But no, I think that could be really interesting, and especially pointing out the fact that she must have had sick in her stomach for it to come up. And also someone points out that when they suggested killing Mike and Alison, she said it's a crime, we'll hang, so maybe that's how she died, she was hung. I'm not sure if that would explain the vomit, which they do question in the comment. I'm not sure. But yeah, no, I do think that poisoning is a very strong theory. Another one is that someone thought that she might have had a heart attack because she was also so excited. Maybe she got herself too excited, which I think would work quite well as well. And also, I'll link this down below, but someone pointed out that there was character descriptions posted on a website which gives all the character descriptions, and on Kitty's it says, she's the sort of person who'd gladly sharpen your axe for you to cut her head off. She is utterly absent of any bitterness towards whoever engineered her untimely demise. The way that this is written implies that she was killed by somebody on purpose. So, you know, especially ways where it says absent of any bitterness towards whoever engineered her death. So she was definitely murdered, so I think poisoning would play very well into this. So next, Robin. The main theory with Robin is that he died of old age because he's about like in his 30s, 40s, which would be completely ancient for the caveman times. So yeah, that seems to be the strongest theory there. Also, the theory that he was struck by lightning, which is a very embarrassing omission from me because I thought, I did draw upon that thing when I was planning the first video. I was like, oh, he can like do something with electricity, maybe he would like electric shock or something. I was like, no, they didn't have electricity in caveman times. But no, lightning would work really well. Some people talk about the scarring, so why wouldn't, if you're struck by lightning, there'd be some sort of mark of it, maybe some burning things or scarring. But I don't know whether lightning would be kind of like instant death or whether it would be kind of prolonged. If it's instant, then I'm guessing that would explain why he hasn't got any scars. A lot of people talk about, you know, the lack of medicine in caveman times, so maybe he had an infection or something like that, and that's why he, you know, and that's why he died. So next is Humphrey, and I did get a bit mistaken with Humphrey. I assumed it was Henry VIII Tudor times, whereas a lot of people are pointing out that the clothes are more reminiscent of Elizabethan times. So yeah, that's still the same method of execution, so it still works. However, it wouldn't have been Henry VIII that killed him. It would have been Elizabeth potentially if his execution was ordered. Also, someone pointed out that if the ghosts are wearing what they died in, then his outfit is wrong for being executed because he's wearing all of his finery, whereas victims of execution were beheaded in just a plain undershirt and a pair of trousers. They didn't wear their expensive clothes to be beheaded in, which would imply that Humphrey wasn't lawfully executed, that perhaps he was just murdered or killed in an accident. I really like this because I immediately assumed, and it seems that most people did, that he was executed on the orders of the king or queen if it is Elizabeth, whereas him being murdered introduces a lot of different possibilities, like why would he have been murdered? Yeah, Yeah, really good. Someone also mentioned that if it is Elizabeth, then she would have killed Catholics, and maybe he was a secret Catholic. And the reason that and the typical execution method would be something very brutal, like they mentioned, being hung, drawn and quartered, which is absolutely horrible. So maybe that he might have been friends with the Queen, or at least have somewhat of a relationship with the Queen, which kind of granted him a more merciful death, like they did with Mary, Queen of Scots. So moving on to Mary, a lot of people pointed out, some quite nicely, some not so nicely, that witches were not actually burnt at the stake, but people accused of being a witch were actually hanged, which is quite interesting because like my automatic assumption with the witch trials is being burnt at the stake, whereas this was a punishment for treason and heresy in Britain, whereas the being burnt at the stake was more of a punishment in America and other places like that where they were actually burnt at the stake. In the character descriptions, it says it's unclear whether Mary is an actual witch or merely a perfectly normal 17th century woman who said something that upset a village elder and ended up being burnt at the stake. Which I think is quite interesting that they mentioned that she could actually be a witch. I am not too sure. I feel like she is so traumatised. I feel like that would be something you'd kind of be traumatised for if you weren't a witch, or if you were completely innocent. I feel like your trauma would be more kind of embedded if you were innocent. Yeah, a lot of people mentioned that maybe because she was a herbalist, and this is actually mentioned again in the character description, she has some very questionable herbal remedies. So perhaps she was accused of witchcraft through her herbal remedies, and that's what made her be burnt at the stake. Also, if we do want to go with the historical accuracy and that she was burnt at the stake, perhaps she committed treason or heresy, so maybe her religion didn't quite match up with the religion that they expected of you in society. Or maybe some people point out that, you know, you could get done with treason if you were responsible for somebody dying, like maybe your husband, which she believes that she was for not throwing cake at him on her wedding day. So yeah, I feel like there's lots of possibilities. I personally, I'm really liking the herbal remedy theory. I think that works really, really well. Someone else also mentions that they think that Mary probably tried to help someone medically and was burnt at the stake for that, which again links to the herbal thing. I think that is something that would work really well. Like, I think there's also the possibility that her herbal remedies perhaps actually killed somebody, so she was trying to help somebody and the herbal remedy was wrong and it actually worsened their condition and killed them, and that was seen as murder and she was burnt at the stake for that, which I feel like could play into her trauma. So obviously there's the trauma of being burnt at the stake, which is absolutely horrible, but it could also be she kind of feels guilt for causing somebody's death by accident, thinking she was trying to help somebody. Yeah, I think that one is probably my favourite theory for that. I know someone did point out that they are personally very attached to Lesbian Mary, which I feel like could work. However, people point out she had a husband, but then obviously lesbians did have to hide their sexuality. I'm not completely convinced because she did have a moment with Robin. However, I think it could work very well. Yeah, I think it could work. So some of the, I'm not going to talk too much into Julian. I think a lot of people took that me not wanting to talk about Julian was me saying that me not knowing how Julian died. I know he died in a sex scandal. I just didn't really go into, you know, what position he was in or what exactly killed him. Some people mentioned that the sex scandal is actually a cover-up for his murder. So he is based on Stephen Milligan, who died of autoerotic asphyxiation, so that's kind of like strangling in a sexual way. And he actually died of that, so perhaps it was something similar to that, so a sex game gone wrong, or, you know, maybe he was drugged and died. I feel like if he was murdered, it could be something to do with maybe he was, you know, he continuously cheated on his wife, so maybe it was something to do with that, or maybe it was for some sort of political agenda. They didn't agree with what he was, his policies or something, and maybe that's why they killed him, because it does say again in the character description, it says were he not dead he'd probably be running the country. So maybe he was an up and coming politician, he had very high hopes of actually becoming prime minister or leader of the party. and that was why he was killed, because he didn't quite agree with some people. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I've tried to do it in a way that's not too confusing, but I like to jump around all the different theories. Obviously you can see all the comments in the comments of the other video. However, I have tried to put up all of the comments and give credit to the people who actually said them. And if I did miss anybody out, I'm sorry. And I did kind of group some comments together because they were quite similar. So yeah, I think that's everything. If not, I apologise, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.